evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching India Tonight with me, Sumita, Kareer, and my colleague Nivedhana, Prabhu. And tonight on the show, we put the focus on the big visit of UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who arrived in Mumbai today for his first official visit as Prime Minister to India. He was hosted by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Remember, this two-day trip is kicking off with keynote addresses at the Global Fintech Fest that will happen tomorrow by both the leaders. In fact, this visit also aims to supercharge the bilateral relationship under the ambitious Vision 2035 framework. And at the heart of these discussions, well, the freshly inked India-UK Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA, that was signed just months ago in July. So, Nivedhana, that's going to be a key focus, but there's lots on the agenda.
Absolutely. In fact, as you pointed out, given the historic pact as well, which has slashed tariffs on nearly 99%, remember, of Indian exports to the UK from textiles and gems to IT services, while clearly opening doors for British autos and whiskey into India. Now, let's also tell you the projections show it could balloon bilateral trade from $50 billion today to $120 billion by 2030, creating jobs and fueling innovation. We're talking about in fintech, defense and clean energy. However, Starmer said that UK will not relax visa rules for India. This was speaking before he arrived in the country to tout the benefits of the trade agreement. So the question we asked tonight, so where do India-UK ties truly stand? And before we get our guests on that topic, let's listen in to what the UK Prime Minister had said to business leaders in Mumbai today.
This is the biggest trade mission that the United Kingdom has ever sent to India. Academic institutions represented, brilliant universities. Obviously, this is a two-parter, if you like. We had Prime Minister Modi over to the United Kingdom earlier this year to sign the FTA, the free trade agreement that we agreed, and today is the return leg of that, if you like. As you quite know, Secretary of State, that FTA is really important for us. It's the biggest deal that we've struck since we left the EU, and I think it's the biggest deal that India has ever struck, so hugely important.
And to discuss the contours of the big story, we're now joined by Ajay Bagga, who's a market expert. Also joining us is Rajkamal Rao, the managing director of Rao Advisors LLC. He's also an opinion columnist. Also joining us on the panel is Manish Singh. He's a market expert. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking the time out and speaking to us here on 80 Now. To you, Mr. Bagga, first, you heard what the UK Prime Minister essentially had to say. He said that this is the largest ever delegation that the UK has taken to India. Of course, the UK has also expressed its intent to double bilateral trade by 2030. Those optics definitely look good on how the UK looks at India as a trading partner. But what is the UK expecting overall from this partnership that it has with India? And why is this partnership critical for the United Kingdom?
Yeah, I think it's quite critical for both countries. And what is coming out now is that the FTA has got negotiated. So we have moved from the negotiation to move towards ratification by both the parliaments and then implementation. So that's where we are at. So this goes to vote in the UK Parliament in a month from now. So the visit is very symbolically significant because we will have to see what comes out of the discussions between PM Modi and the UK Prime Minister. The second big thing is it accords India a big success globally to be able to hold up this FTA as one model for the EU, for other countries, with 99.1% of Indian goods being de-tariffed, going at zero tariffs. I think it's a big accomplishment. The visas will take time, but the good thing is both sides have been very pragmatic and they have they have compartmentalized the visa issue, and the mobility visas have been talked about. So select professions, select professionals, investors, business to business deals will go through on the visa side. The broader brush visa, what India was demanding, has been compartmentalized for later discussions. The UK gains in terms of being able to export into India at much lower tariffs. There is talk of, for example, the Scottish Federation for the Scotch whisky is talking about 1,000 jobs increasing thanks to the lower tariffs that they are expecting. So from cars to education to alcoholic beverages to a lot of innovative products. I think all that comes out. And for UK, especially post-Brexit, it really is a very big deal that is happening. And that's what Prime Minister Starmer has also mentioned, that post-Brexit, this is the biggest deal that we are entering into.
Absolutely, Mr. Bagga. In fact, in those opening remarks, lots that we will, continue to talk about. Given, of course, in your opening statement, you've also gone on to call it pragmatic. But having said that, Mr. Rao, coming to you, let's begin with how you are looking at this. And more importantly, in a world of realigned alliances, where does the India-UK relationship sit today, in your opinion, with this key visit? Is it strategic necessity or aspirational partnership?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Actually, I think it is a strategic necessity for Starmer. If you recall, they had an election last year and Labour won in a landslide. And a year later, Starmer's polling is really in the tank. I believe there was an Ipsos poll that showed him only at 13%, and Nigel Farage is gaining. So nothing is really working for Starmer on the economic front. I mean, there is, the growth is stagnant, productivity is low, inflation is persistent, there is a cost of living crisis. So Starmer is looking for some good news. And what better way for a country with only a 1.1% GDP growth year over year? What better way than to do a trade deal with the fastest growing economy in the world, which is India. So for him, it is definitely not. It's more than optics. Actually, this trade deal could potentially help improve his GDP by by 0.1, 0.2, 0.3%, and everything will help. One point here that I would like to make is that there was, Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is the world's biggest hedge fund, magician.
Right.
He started Bridgewater Associates. And in a recent podcast to a British podcasting station, he was actually listing out all of the economic problems of the UK, how the UK is dwindling. And so I think from that point of view, this trip for Starmer is really a lifesaver. Because as Mr. Baga said, there are so many...
Mr. Rao. Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely, Mr. Rao, and this is happening at a time when the world is facing economic uncertainty on account of US's tariff-related policies. And of course, you did mention about what's happening with the UK domestically. Inflation is not looking good, neither is growth either. So definitely, they're looking at a growth unlocking, in which is essentially what the UK PM said. But let me come to you, Mr. Singh. Now, Mr. Bagga, in his opening remarks, suggested that this is going to be big for the United Kingdom, the kind of mutual benefits that both the countries can really look at with respect to this FTA. But let me also draw your attention to the FTA pact that has come into force. This is the first such pact with any European bloc or country that has come into effect. But when you look at market access, well, we've given FTA countries also market access. We've given the UK also market access. But with FTA, the market access is tied to investment commitments that have been made by the FTA bloc. Do you think this particular pact lacks on that front?
I would say, while I don't know the details of that pact, but I think that that's a very valid point, that you cannot have market access without making any strong investments commitment. But I would also reiterate that what you read in the press about UK may not entirely be true, because I live here and I can tell you that the situation is not as dire as the polls indicate. And I was listening to the two remarks made by Mr. Baga and Mr. Rao. I do agree with the sentiments, but this deal the recent deal agreed between the Modi government and Starmer government is good for both the UK and India, because India is coming under pressure from what US policies is going to be, and that seems to be evolving. And I think it's very critical for India to have partners, to not only show that India can do a deal with other economies. I'm not saying India should stand up and have a fight with the US, but to show that it can engage with a developed Western market economy and have a deal is a big win. So, and same for the UK, because UK has its own problems, but UK does need to engage from outside the EU. Look, yes, the EU threatened to put 50% tariff on UK steel exports. I mean, that's big news for Prime Minister Starmer, who's cozying up to the EU. So for him to show that he can have another access to another market and work with a growing economy like India is very critical. So I would say it is good for both sides, and it's pragmatic. The UK financial market is preeminent in terms of products, access, services, everything. Same with the legal sector, contracts, and everything that it underpins. It'll be good for India to have access to that and work with the UK. So I believe this is in both sides' interest, but it should move beyond talk and implementation, because we've seen this deal talked about for many years. It should really go down to implementation, movement of capital, people, and that's what we should be looking for.
All right. So in a sense, that talk should be translating into the kind of concrete action that we're looking at. But Mr. Bagga, I want to get you here in terms of draw your attention to what you were saying in your opening remarks as well, as far as the visas are also concerned, right? Because while we, of course, look at how these tariffs on British goods will be dropped sharply under the FTA, the UK refuses to ease those visa norms for Indian talent. Does that, in a sense, expose a political limit to economic ambition?
No, that's in their self-interest. They have an issue with immigration, and the far-right parties are gaining political space based on that. So no government can really throw open visas to a large population country and a large skilled force like India has. So it's in their national interest. What has been pragmatic is that it has been compartmentalized. So the mobility provisions provide for certain professions, like chefs, like yoga instructors, like investors, getting preferential visa access. So I think over time, India will be seeking to expand this mobility provisions rather than try for an omnibus visa clearance for all Indians, which will not come through in the kind of situation globally that is there. And UK faces a big challenge in terms of North African immigration coming through Europe, and even Middle East immigrants coming through Europe, even into UK. So their welfare system is stretched by it. So in that kind of a scenario, it's not justified for any country to expect this, especially for a population surplus, very skilled kind of workforce like India.
Right.
What we will benefit is from the innovation. We will. There are at least about 6 UK universities looking at setting up centers here, looking at joint ventures here. So a lot of the innovation, lot of investment on the AI side, because we have the skilled manpower. I think that will open up. And UK has also mentioned quite significantly, UK has mentioned H-1B visas would be open to relocate to UK.
Okay, so Mr. Bagga, essentially you're speaking about the fact that a balance will be looked at. Let me take that point across to Mr. Rao as well. Mr. Rao, the UK has suggested that there can be no relaxation for visa rules. How will that play out, given the fact that mobility is a very crucial part of the UK-India FTA agreement? And Mr. Bagga was just speaking about the mobility from UK to India. But what about the other side?
Yeah, so all of these trade deals, they practically come to a grinding halt today when we talk about mobility. Mobility is very, very important for India, and mobility is not quite as important to the Western countries because of the domestic problems that they're facing. Mr. Bagga was talking, and Mr. Singh also, about what is happening in the UK. The UK is a perceived leader in AI, and Mr. Bagga mentioned AI, but it is AI. AI is a real threat to lots of white collared professions, and it is in the white collared professions that India excels. Whether it is fintech or tech or cloud or whatever. So at some point, these two things will clash. And you're seeing that today happening in the US, where I live. And so there is a substantial backlash against any kind of mobility, the H-1B visa. Now there is talk in the MAGA world about trying to restrict even OPT visas or H-4 visas for spouses. So the whole idea here is, I mean, the narrative is that Indians in particular are kind of taking over the jobs that domestic workers have, and they're being displaced. And many of these jobs are being outsourced uh, to India. That has been the global development model for 25 years. But all of a sudden, this has now become the spotlight. It is the spotlight everywhere, Sumita, not just in the UK, but in the US, even in Europe. So this is something where I think India will not be able to make as many gains. Mr. Baga said that he's hopeful, and I am hopeful too, but I'm a little less optimistic than Mr. Baga.
All right. Given the fact that both of you have slightly differing points, Mr. Singh, would you want to add to that as to how you're looking at this overall situation?
I would say that, movement of people and capital has always been at the heart of doing business. So I don't I don't have any different view from what has been expressed so far. But I am definitely more optimistic because it will be driven by the needs in terms of needs of the economy. And while the politics can always be very tenuous, it should be driven from businesses. So if you look at the H-1B aspect that has been raised, you saw NVIDIA yesterday saying that they will continue to bear the cost of sponsoring H-1B visa for their employees. So the employees or the key people that need to move, in my opinion, will continue to move, and the businesses are going to underwrite that cost. And that's how it should be. It is never going to be en masse. That was the case before, and it shouldn't have been en masse as the case was before. So from business point of view, I feel very optimistic that the people that should move for the right reasons and that the business demands will be supported from both the sides. And I think that you will see the same thing from the UK. There won't be a complete ban. There will be carve-outs. It will be clearly spelled. It may not be a long-term, like what we call indefinite leave to remain in the UK, but it could be for a fixed term. But any key people that need to move will move if that's what the business demands. And I think the pragmatism is going to weigh against the politics.
Right. Mr. Singh, let me come to you, Mr. Baga, since we're talking about mobility as a concern that is not just being seen in Europe or the United States, but, many other geographies across the world. Since India is negotiating an FTA with the European Union as well, the leaders from both the sides have essentially stated that they're looking at closing that agreement by the end of this year. But do you think that the shadow of these concerns around mobility, will they hover over the India-EU FTA as well? And how is the Indian government, do you think, is going to be looking at addressing these concerns in a practical manner while also maintaining the ties with these countries?
Yeah, I think we have been very practical, very pragmatic. You have to compartmentalize it, what Mr. Singh mentioned as carve-outs. So you're not going to get omnibus visa relaxations. EFTA, quite frankly, Norway has the money. Out of the 4 countries, I think Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway and Switzerland, you will get the maximum out of that $100 billion coming from the Norwegian sovereign fund. So we got lucky there that over 15 years they've committed to spend $100 billion in terms of investments into India. UK, I think, will provide a lot more expertise rather than sheer capital coming into India. And then over time, this mobility provisions will increase. EU is a huge market. If you look at the first 6 months of this year, our textile exports, for example, to the EU have gone up 15% in volume terms, 14% in value terms. So some part of the loss to the US is going into EU. So labor-intensive sectors, we will be looking at EU giving us a preferential access on par with the Bangladesh or a Vietnam that right now they are providing. So I think we'll have limited objectives on the EU side as well. It's a mirage to think that any country will open its borders in these very protectionist times to the hordes of skilled workers that India really provides. So we have to seek capital. We have to seek carve-outs in terms of mobility for certain professions. And we have to see innovative technology and expertise to come into India. We are the home of GCCs. We can really build on that further. We should double, triple those revenues. So service exports can really take off in India based on all these markets and our labor-intensive products finding a home there. I think UK, for us to get access, it can be a reselling hub as well to the rest of the world. So getting a zero tariff into the UK market is a huge plus for our labor-intensive industries.
In fact, as you say that before we in fact wrap up this discussion, let me take a final question to you, Mr. Rao. You know, as the US over here is turning protectionist and Europe in a sense introspective, does this FTA really symbolize Britain's pivot to India as a long-term growth corridor, given what we're looking at happen geopolitically?
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Nivedhana, because, the UK is, you know, uh, for the UK, it needs friends with whom to trade. Mr. Singh obviously is the expert here; he lives there. But I think after Brexit, the UK has been trying to find their sweet spot. Remember, they were the first to sign a trade deal with Trump because they wanted to be different from the EU. So the UK has always been looking for partners, and this partnership, I think, the FTA partnership with India, can be a big benefit to the UK. I agree that it is mutually beneficial to India also, especially with what has happened between India and the US. But I think for the UK, this is it's a very important moment in UK-India relations. And think about the optics, right? I mean, why does he have to land with so many CEOs and all that? The optics, I think, will convey
Absolutely.
that the UK is ready to do business. Yes.
Absolutely. UK is ready to do business. What is the final outcome of these talks? That will become clearer only tomorrow. But we have time for one last question. I'll take that question to Mr. Singh. Mr. Singh, in 50 seconds flat, let me also ask your thoughts, ask for your thoughts on the one issue that India has raised over and over again with the United Kingdom, and that's essentially on the return of economic offenders and fugitives that, like I said, India has taken up over the past few years with the UK government. Do you think the UK government and the Keir Starmer government will be willing to look at that issue? And will there be any concrete guarantees or outcomes on that matter?
I'm not in the government, so I cannot answer that question. But I would say that, that is for India to press that matter because it is important to India. And this is upon the policymakers in the UK to see that it could be a condition on which India could do a better deal. And I do agree with the sentiment of the question that it is something that India should seek, and nobody should think that they can do a fraud or economic offense in India and come and sit tight here in London. I don't think that should ever be allowed, and that should be pursued, and justice should be served.
Okay.
All right, fair enough, Mr. Singh. But on that note, both Sumita and I want to thank you as well as Mr. Bagga and Mr. Rao for taking the time out and joining us here this evening. But for the moment, we leave the conversation.